What's up, everybody? Hope you're doing well. Been a few weeks, but we're back at it. Life has been hectic, but that's the way life gets sometimes. It's just the way things are, all for good reasons, though. I do today want to talk about something that has really struck me over the past few weeks. We're in a small group, and within that, we're following through a curriculum and ran across this parable that I read, and I've known about it before, but it really hit me differently. Also going to be enjoying a few sips of this Knob Creek 21-year release. Generous sample from a friend. But yeah, really looking forward to this one. This is something that, as someone who grew up in the church and then stepped away for a while for my own reasons and then came back around, less from the religious side and more from the relationship side, which is a whole conversation in and of itself. This one really, really struck me, and it's Matthew 20, and it's the parable of the vineyard workers, and it's 16 verses. We're not going to read them all, but I am just going to summarize it. This landowner hired workers for his vineyard. He agreed to pay them a denarius for the day and send them into his vineyard. So these workers came up to him. He said, "Hey, I'll pay you a denarius to work in my vineyard for today." And they said, "Yep, great, cool, let's do it." About the ninth hour, about 9 in the morning, he went out and saw others standing in the marketplace doing nothing. He told them, "You also go and work in my vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right." So they went. This goes on and on. He picks up some people at noon, 3 in the afternoon, 5 in the afternoon. And then when the evening comes, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, "Call the workers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last one hired and going on to the first." So there have been people there all day long. There's also been people who showed up to work at 5 in the afternoon. I'm assuming this is, they don't say when they're done, but obviously the people that got hired at 5 in the afternoon were nowhere near there as long as the people that had been there all day. And he paid all of them the same thing. And obviously some of the people that were there all day really took, this bothered them quite a bit. They felt that it was quite unfair. And it says, so when those came who were hired first, they expected to receive more, but each of them also received a denarius. When they received it, they began to grumble against the landowner. These who were hired last worked only 1 hour, they said, and you have made them equal to us who have borne the burden of the work and the heat of the day. But he answered one of them, "I am not being unfair to you, friend. Didn't you agree to work for a denarius?" And that's what they agreed to. He said, "Take your pay and go. I want to give the one who was hired last the same as I gave to you. Don't I have the right to do what I want with my own money? Or are you envious because I am generous? So the last will be first and the first will be last." And this is a really interesting thing because I definitely relate way more to, in the context of work, with the vineyard workers who had been there all day and expect to get paid more. It's just kind of our way of thinking about things in fairness in this world. But in the context of this parable, what he's driving at is that the vineyard owner is God. And it doesn't matter if you're working all day in the vineyard or if you're the last person hired and you're barely there at all. If your payment is is heaven and the salvation that is offered by God, the payment is the payment regardless. Your gift, your reward is the same no matter whether it's at the end of your life or if you've dedicated your entire life to working in the vineyard. And this is never more evident than in the story of the thief on the cross next to Jesus. And he repents, and Jesus says, "Surely you'll be with me in heaven today." At the very last minute, at the finish line, this thief, he commits his life to Jesus, and Jesus says, "You'll be in heaven with me." And I think the reason this story is so interesting to me is that, I think there are people who think, "Oh, I'll get around to the whole Jesus thing later on. When things are more serious or maybe near the end, I'll give my life to Jesus then." I think there are people who, this target audience for Jesus telling these parables oftentimes was the Pharisees, the really religious people who felt like they were better than everyone else. It's crazy. Like, the Bible's nothing like modern day religion, right? Like, These Pharisees thought they were better than everybody, thought they were owed more, thought it was not right that people who were lesser, quote unquote, lesser than them received the same salvation that they were receiving. And Jesus came and squashed all that. And he said, the reward is going to be the reward. But here's what struck me the most about all this. And I need a sip before I talk about this. By the way, Knob Creek 21, very good, very expensive. I'm not rushing out the door to buy it right away, but it is very good. Yeah, that's really good. Man. Yeah, I love to just have sips and kind of meditate on this stuff. Meditate on the pour and on the word. So what struck me about this was, I think for a period of time in my life, into my teens, into my 20s, I just kind of went and did my own thing. Once I turned 18 and I could tell my grandmother I wasn't going to church anymore, I stopped going to church, stopped having any kind of relationship with God, any kind of relationship with Jesus. Life had been hard up to that point. There had been a lot of crazy things that went on. Lost my mother, she was killed. Lost my grandmother, my grandfather. Had a whole debacle with, biological dad versus the dad who was kind of around when I was being raised. Like, it was just a lot of weird things that happened. And I didn't know why they happened. And at some point in time, I'll talk about and connect the dots of how I think all that was a lot of people in free will making their own really poor decisions, but then God taking those broken pieces of our humanity and using them for the good to put things back together in a way that has created something beautiful, albeit at the cost of some wreckage. And lives were lost. I mean, we are creatures of free will. But I'll talk about that more in depth at some other point in time. It does tie in directly to this point, though. For so long, I was like, I'll get around to it. I always believed, but I wasn't living in relationship with Jesus. And I read this story now in a different light, because what this story makes me sad about under the surface is that the people who were working for the shorter period of time during that day, they're not going to get to enjoy the process of doing the work all along the way. And I know if you're putting this in the context of working in a vineyard, it probably doesn't seem all that exciting. It actually probably seems like something you wouldn't want to do. I'd rather work less and get paid more. But in the context of faith, if you come to Jesus at the end of your life, you've missed out on the relationship with him all through your life. A lot of people think, and the way that Christianity sells itself to other people is through this payoff of heaven at the end, this payoff of eternal life. And it's almost framed within the context of denying yourself and like not doing the things that you want to do, or not enjoying all the pleasures of the world that other people are enjoying, just so that you can achieve this benefit of eternal life in an afterlife that we know very little about. And I think that is such a disservice to the beauty of living in relationship with Jesus on a day-to-day basis. And I would not have the context to say that 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. And this isn't something I hear people talk about, and there is a certain element of denying yourself. But let me just paint a picture here. Let me make a pretty easy example. If health and fitness are important to you, a lot of people who it's not important to, they say, oh, I just want to eat whatever I want to eat. I want to drink whatever I want to drink. I want to do whatever I want to do, and I'm not really going to take care of myself. Well, there are direct outcomes from that we all know what they are. Your body will start betraying you. You'll start falling apart. You'll start getting sick. You'll start getting injured, and you'll become old, frail, and your quality of life is going to be poor. It's going to be poor now, but it's going to degrade and get even more poor in the future. And then at some point you're going to start trying to retroactively fix things, but your life is, you're not going to feel good. Whereas if you make a dedicated effort to take care of yourself in whatever way is important to you, not only do you get to enjoy the benefits of the way that workouts make you feel, the way that eating not trash food all the time makes you feel, you just feel better on a day-to-day basis. And, everybody slips up a little bit. You're going to have that from time to time. Even the people that are hardcore workouters or hardcore dieters, they have their times where they slip up, just like we as Christians, as followers of Christ, we slip up from time to time as well. Just because, somebody had a cheat meal doesn't mean they're not a fit person anymore. Just because you make a mistake doesn't mean that you are out of relationship with Jesus anymore. But living in health leads to you feeling better on a day-to-day basis. And living with Jesus leads to you having a more fulfilled life on a day-to-day basis. And I want to flip over to John 10:10 here, because this really drives at the whole point. John 10:10 says, "The thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full." These are Jesus's words here. Have it to the full is in the NIV, this translation, but in some translations it says, "I have come that they may have life and have it more abundantly." So I bring this verse up because it really ties in to me directly with the vineyard workers. There almost is no such thing as treading water. Like, you've got to eat, so you're either making healthier decisions that are going to help you feel better, or you're making poor decisions that are going to make you feel worse. Same with living life with Jesus. You're either living life with Jesus, which is going to lead, you got to live life. So you're either living life with Jesus, which is going to lead to life in the full, or you're living life in the world. And the world is a decaying, broken place. I think we can all look around and acknowledge that. I think, at least in my experience, when I've tried to live in the ways of the world, it's always led to heartache. It's always either myself being heartbroken or me doing things that have left other people heartbroken. You look around at like all these people that you think have everything, and they have personal lives that are falling apart. They might have fame, they might have wealth, they may have all these things, and their personal lives are in shambles, There are so many examples. You don't have to look very far in the world to see that most people in the world are dealing with a lot of stuff. There's problems everywhere. And what Jesus offers us is he offers us life in the full, life more abundantly, by living in relationship with him. And it's not that living life with Jesus and in relationship with Jesus makes all that stuff stop, but he's there with you in it. Psalms 23, "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, he is with me." Jesus is with you through those things, and then you have him to lean on in those situations that are hard. I think a lot of people ask Jesus to take away your situations, take away your hardships. And sometimes he does do that, but sometimes he's there with you in them, and you're asking him to deliver you out of them when he's trying to go through them with you, because he's growing you. You're going through it and growing through it to become what he wants you to become if you just walk with him. So in the context of, getting the payment at the end, like the workers hired at 5:00 versus the people that had been there all day, don't wait till 5:00 to start working. Don't wait till the end of the line to start living life with Jesus. The thief on the cross, he's being crucified next to Jesus. He probably had a pretty rough, hard life, spent some time in prison, spent some time broken inside, and Jesus forgave him and said he would be in heaven. But think about the turmoil internally that thief had to deal with throughout his entire life. And that was an entire span of time that he could have been living in relationship with Jesus had he known about Jesus. Well, I'm maybe not a direct quote right there. Don't quote me on that, because Jesus had only been doing his ministry for 3 years. The thief hadn't known, but apply that to us rather. We can live our life with Jesus, and we can have life and life in the full. And it doesn't mean that you're not enjoying the things that you want to enjoy. It means that you're living in relationship with Jesus, and through that relationship, he changes you, and he changes the desires of your heart to be less like the world and more like him. And I think that's really where the gospel message is getting lost a lot of times in this. Like, it's more of like a preaching of like this white knuckle behavior modification, that you've got to change the way you're living, and you can't do this, and you can't do that. There's all these rules and regulations, and that's not it at all. It is living life in relationship with Jesus, getting to know him, and clinging to that even in the hard times, that produces such a beautiful experience of living life. It changes your perspective. It's like putting on a completely different pair of glasses and seeing things in an entirely new way. And I cannot stress this enough. It's heaven is the goal, yes, but man, I think that's really short selling the reward of living a relationship with Jesus on a day-to-day basis. I'm not my daughter's father, and I'm not my wife's husband to, at the end of my life, have somebody tell me I was a good father or a good husband. That's not the goal. The end is not the goal. Living in relationship with my wife and enjoying that relationship that we have together, that is my reward. Living in relationship with my daughter, being able to enjoy that every step of the way, that is my reward. And it's the same way with Jesus. And I think we have to stop looking at this carrot dangling on the stick at the end of life thing as the only reward. Every single day can be a reward if you just turn to Jesus. And I want to wrap this up with quotes from a song. It's an old hymn called Turn Your Eyes Upon Jesus. And the first lines of this song are so powerful to me. This song, I'm going to try to get through this without having tears come to my eyes. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. His glory and grace makes the things of this world grow strangely dim. The brokenness, the sorrow, all the messed up things you see, all the heartbreak, all the pain, those things can grow strangely dim. Strangely is such a perfect word. It almost doesn't even make sense how much that those things can become dim when you put them in the perspective of his glory and grace and let that carry you through. It is a beautiful thing. It is a wonderful thing. And we cannot short sell how special it is to live in relationship with Jesus. So I'm going to end this one here with a cheers to that. Oh, man. I don't have $300 burning a hole in my pocket that I could go out and spend on Knob Creek 21. But if I did, I'd probably buy a bottle. This might be the best Knob Creek or Jim Beam product I've personally ever tasted. This is really exceptional. I'm going to enjoy the rest of this. I'm going to go hang out with my family, enjoy the rest of the evening. I would recommend you do the same. And most importantly, start a relationship with Jesus. That's the most important thing. Cheers. See you guys next time.